anyone else for the same, I won't be so gentle next time.
Welcome back and welcome to Season 3, Bonus Episode 5 of Me and My Friend Pete, another Donuts and Dimes production. Shout outs to the Key Keepers and High Council. Look, before we dive into anything, I know it can be triggering for some people to hear the word Nazi used so freely in the coming episode, but a wise wizard once said, fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself. I don't fear fascists. I fear what fascist regime following the Nazi playbook can do. I fear the apathy, ignorance, and hatred a fascist power structure encourages and cultivates. I fear not putting these fears into words because from my living of life, I've learned that this is how fears grow, in a quiet normalizing of othering and division and better them than me, in the silence of the facade that the way the world's burning around us is normal. But mostly, I fear I don't know how to articulate properly that no matter your demographic, no matter what you believe, fascism taking seed, taking root, and growing leaves all of us collectively worse off whether we suffer the worst parts of it or not. But courage isn't the absence of fear. I don't post many of my political views online. Not because I don't have the courage of my convictions, but because I don't feel the inclination to argue with people who think the restrictions of man-made borders are an excuse for detaining people indefinitely. I won't argue about why universal health care is a human right, or why police forces and prisons for profit should be abolished. I won't argue against the genocide of Palestinians or Tigrayans or Congolese or any other person's right to live with someone who thinks they don't from the safety of their armchair, far removed from bombs falling and innocents dying. Not online, because too often these serious issues become sound bites or hashtags and the nuance is lost. The last thing I want is to spotlight how clever I am at the expense or exploitation of people's genuine suffering. I acknowledge that most people's politics, because it's all politics, are deeply personal, but personal and factual are not the same thing. Freedom of speech is a wonderful thing, but I would argue espousing arguments on the interwebs without research, parroting without thinking, and yapping without a willingness to listen and learn waters down the concept, and we're all the worse for it. But I don't have to worry. I don't argue online. I come here once or twice a month, laugh, joke, and have a great time talking about comic books. In that talk, I dive down a lot of rabbit holes on the things said in comics, trying to connect them to my own experiences, usually for the sake of a poorly told joke or to pat myself on the back for my own cleverness. But sometimes it gets deeper. Sometimes reading a comic book from the collection I've cultivated over the years rings true with the events I'm currently living through and witnessing in real time. And so it's been with Namor the Submariner. I mentioned before that I didn't own any Namor comics as a kid. The complete run I own now was purchased 2 years ago at Midtown Comics, and I really only purchased it thinking about Namor's future in the MCU. I figured I could cough up a dime or two now for a donut or two in the future, but Marvel Zombie I am. Once I read the series, I realized, like so many other books in my collection, that this grouping wasn't going anywhere. Reading number 11, I saw more than a few parallels between the fictional story I was retelling and the politics of the world I'm living in. You all know this is a one-man outfit, but I've tried my best to back up the things I'll say in this episode with facts and figures I've researched extensively using the internet and my background as an amateur sociologist. That said, in sociology, it's important to take note of our own biases and admit that who we are, where we're from, and where we stand in society all color how our research is interpreted. If anything I say doesn't ring true to you, do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and believe whatever you want. This isn't an invitation to debate. If anything, it's a humble ask for you not to treat the things happening around us in society as normal. These are dark times, but I'd posit that human beings, almost by definition, are a perseverant species. I'm convinced we'll make it through them as we did countless times before, and we'll be all the better for it. When we do, what do you want to say your role in this moment was? As a firm believer in freedom being the ability to do what I like without treading on others' autonomy, I would never sit here from the safety of my own armchair and tell you how to resist. But I'd implore you to find one of the many fronts our republic is being attacked from, roll up your sleeves, and help pushing back. To the lawyers, activists, and everyday people already doing so, those I know and those I only read about and imagine, keep going. Your efforts are appreciated, and if the thanks in the present aren't enough, the perseverance of the best parts of the human experience will, in the annals of history, be. In the real world, no heroes wear capes, and history is made by all of us, not just those under the spotlight.
Where are you? Here.
We're back in Marvel's House of Ideas with Marvel's first and mightiest mutant, Namor the Submariner. The last time we saw Namor, he'd taken an L from Master Man, been caged by a group of neo-Nazis and severely dehydrated, was fighting desperately to save the lives of Jim Hammond and Anne Raymond, the original Human Torch and wife of his sidekick Toro, respectively. To add insult to injury, Namor's been having delusions that he's back in World War II Germany fighting Nazis. Aren't we all? But luck may be turning to Namor's side because the doors burst open and the invaders, the Allied forces superhero arm who specialized in punching Nazis in the face during World War II, have just arrived on scene. Unbeknownst to Namor, his antagonists Master Man and Warrior Woman are working for one Herr Nacht, a white-haired billionaire singularly focused on completing Hitler's dream of a thousand-year Reich, this time with himself on top as Führer. How's he gonna do it? Using one of the many tactics the Nazis did, making their move in the midst of economic chaos. For the former, it was the Treaty of Versailles forcing Germany to take responsibility for World War I, which meant, amongst other things, paying reparations to the Triple Entente. That's the Russian Empire, French Third Republic, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, respectively, on top of being in the midst of the Great Depression. For Nacht, a student of history, taking advantage of the economic turmoil East Germany is going through because of the collapse of the communist government to become the new Führer, is just smart practice. Alpha Kappa Delta lifetime membership aside, I'm an armchair historian and amateur sociologist at best, at worst, a guy with a microphone and a podcast, and the world knows we've got more than our fair share of those. We are well represented. Still, I'm a firm believer that if I'm going to choose to sit down in front of a microphone, sometimes, I have to say something of substance. There are plenty of factors that lead to the rise of authoritarianism in a country. Populist messaging, scapegoating, a strong man with a charisma, willing to step into the unknown and get others to follow, propaganda, breakdown of the public's trust in government, and on and on and on. There's another factor. If you follow American politics, you know Trump has been on the tariff tear lately. First against our closest neighbors Mexico and Canada, then in a more widespread global tax assault on imports, before rolling that back and then taxing China almost exclusively. Almost immediately it became a shit show, and the stock market reflects that shit rolling downhill is how things go. As I type this, the market has lost all of the growth it's seen under the Biden administration, having fallen to, you guessed it, numbers unseen since the last time Trump was president. Now look, I'm not a money man, I'm not an economist, I don't spend a lot of my time worried about Wall Street. That's not the life I live. I believe it's all a racket. I believe you have to pay to play. After thousands of Americans got together to make money off of the GameStop stock way back, you don't know how many times I had to say that, and the stock market essentially fucked them over, didn't give them the money when they tried to cash out, I was over it. It's a racket. Knew it before, saw it in action. Once you see things like that, can't trust these things. Unless I make a ton of money and it's worth the investment, I won't be fucking with the stock market. That said, though, I understand it has value, all right? All these different things that we have set up in society, they're there for a reason. They have value. And even if something isn't valuable to me directly, that doesn't mean it will not impact me at all. Back to. All that said, I thought this was a horrible move and went in search of proof, which was simple to find, but to be clear, one of the things any sociologist, amateur or otherwise, will tell you is be aware of your confirmation bias. Translation, the easiest thing to do is find statements and facts to fit into the narrative of what you believe. So I went looking for someone, anyone, anywhere who thought these tariffs would be a good idea, and after scouring the interwebs for hours, I can say economists from all over the spectrum: macro, micro, financial, development, environmental, industrial, labor, and health. All these different types of economists almost unanimously agree this was a horrible move. So why? Why do it? My theory? Control. Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut said it better than I can.
Quoted from Chris Murphy.
Those trying to understand the tariffs as economic policy are dangerously naive. No, the tariffs are a tool to collapse our democracy, a means to compel loyalty from every business that will need to petition Trump for relief, a thread to explain his plan and how we fight back. This week you will read many confused economists and political pundits who won't understand how the tariffs make economic sense. That's because they don't. They aren't designed as economic policy. The tariffs are simply a new, super dangerous political tool. You see, our founders created a president with limited and checked powers. They specifically put the power of spending and taxation in the hands of the legislature. Why? Because they watched how kings and despots used spending and taxes to control their subjects. British kings used taxation to reward loyalty and punish dissent. Our own revolution was spurred by the king's use of heavy taxation of the colonies to punish our push for self-governance. The king's message was simple: stop protesting and I'll stop taxing. Trump knows that he can weaken and maybe destroy democracy by using spending and taxation in the same way. He is using access to government funds to bully universities, law firms, and state and local governments into loyalty pledges. Healthy democracies rely on an independent legal profession to maintain the rule of law, independent universities to guard objective truth and provide forums for dissent to authority, and independent state local government to counterbalance a powerful federal government. But the private sector also plays a role to protect democracy. I'm going to assume he meant role there, got a little spelling error, but who am I to judge? Back to. But the private sector also plays a role to protect democracy. Independent industry has power. The tariffs are Trump's tool to erode that independence. Now, one by one, every industry or company will need to pledge loyalty to Trump in order to get sanctions relief. All right, let me read that again. The tariffs are Trump's tool to erode that independence. Now, one by one, every industry or company will need to pledge loyalty to Trump in order to get sanctions relief. What could Trump demand as part of a quiet loyalty pledge? Public shows of support from executives for all his economic policy, contributions to his political efforts, promises to police employee support for his political opposition. The tariffs are designed to create economic hardship. Why? So that Trump has a straight-faced rationale for releasing them, business by business or industry by industry. As he adjusts or grants relief, it's a win-win. The economy improves and dissent disappears. And once Trump has the lawyers, colleges, and industry under his thumb, it becomes very hard for the opposition to have any viable space to maneuver. Trump didn't invent this strategy. It's the playbook for democratically elected leaders who want to stay in power forever. The tariffs aren't economic policy, they are political weapons. But as long as we see this clearly, we can stop him. Public mobilization is working. Today, a few Republicans joined Democrats to vote against one set of tariffs. The people still have the power.
Thanks, Chris Murphy.
That said, would-be despots and authoritarians understand one of the best moments to truly seize power is when the money's fucked up. So it was with the Third Reich, so it may be with Trump. So it definitely is with Air Knocked Here. And I know, I get it. There's a strong belief held by many that our current president is inept and doesn't know what he's doing, but two things need to be understood. First, the man's got charisma. And I don't mean Merriam-Webster's definition, personal magic of leadership arousing special popular loyalty or enthusiasm for a public figure, such as a political leader. I mean the sociological definition coined by sociological rock star Max Weber. Weber believed there were three types of charisma. Traditional charisma, based on long-established customs, traditions, and beliefs, typically associated with religious leaders or figures who are seen as having a divine connection or being chosen by a higher power. Legal charisma, derived from a person's position or role within a formal organization or institution, and based on the authority granted to individuals by laws, rules, and regulations. Think most politicians in America. And charismatic authority, based on the personal qualities and magnetism of an individual. Charismatic authority is not derived from traditional or legal sources, but rather from the unique qualities and abilities of the charismatic individual. Examples of charismatic leaders include Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, and Nelson Mandela. So, I'm going to try to break this down simply as I imagined it when I was learning it in undergrad. Imagine you're standing at a fork in the road. In front of each, there is a person waiting. The road on the left, the path is clear, and more, the person standing here says they know the path, they've walked it more than once, and you can trust they will lead you to somewhere recognizable. On the right, there is no path. Only a fog-covered wilderness. The sky is dark here, the eyes of unknown creatures reflect light from the abyss. Your safety isn't guaranteed. It's scary. But the person standing here is able to convince you that no matter what happens in this unknown wilderness, they will protect you and they will lead you to safety and prosperity. The person on the path to the left, they've most likely got legal and traditional authority on their side. The person on the right, only their ability to rouse and convince the crowd. In my opinion, the person standing on the right is much more powerful because unlike the person on the left, where the power is derived from their ability to navigate society and its pre-established organizations, the person on the right's power lies in their ability to get you and the crowd slowly gathering to follow them into this unknown. And again, I get it. Putting Trump in the company of two Nobel Prize winners in Mandela and King and a 5-time nominee in Mahatma Gandhi leaves more than a sour taste in the mouths of most people I respect. But each of those men were able to get people to adopt their philosophies on how to navigate their worlds, ignoring deep-rooted societal norms and customs, to remake the world into something more in line with what they envisioned. If you believe Trump doesn't have that same power, you are either sleeping through January 6, 2021, or doing your best to ignore it. And he's continued these actions in his second term through executive orders, antiquated laws, and straight up fuck you, this is how it is power moves. He's been disappearing political dissidents without trial in violation of their constitutional rights, denying access to governmental buildings to any law firm that's brought suit against him, stripping power from independent regulatory agencies, trying to end birthright citizenship, trying to dismantle the Department of Education, denying White House access to news organizations he believes are unfairly criticizing him, and on and on and on. It is a blitzkrieg assault on democracy, and it is intentional. And almost every time he does these things, there's an uproar of, how could he do this? Why doesn't anybody stop him? Well, a lot of the answer is because he's barreling headlong into the unknown legality and social upheaval his actions are causing, and most people don't know how to respond because they've never imagined the scenarios he's creating. He is in the wilderness, and he is not alone. That was a long first, but the second thing to keep in mind is even if he is inept, even if that premise is true, the man's been elected to the highest office in the land twice now, proving that at the very least there are more than a few people around him who are not. It is both incredibly naive and stupendously dangerous to believe there isn't a focused and targeted agenda at work against so many of the most marginalized members of American society being carried out by his administration, despite the idiotic headlines his cabinet can't seem to stay out of. Even something his administration's done that reeks of comicality, like high-ranking cabinet members and military personnel planning a military operation over the Signal app and adding a journalist by accident, is always underscored by the horror and the realization that real people are being killed and their deaths celebrated by emoji chain. That's fucking nuts!
But can we talk comic books already?
I thought I had been. But back to his economic plans in motion, Knox made other moves to ensure he comes out on top. And what's power without muscle to enforce it? Hitler had the Gestapo, Trump's got ICE, and Aaron Knox, to ensure his plans go off without a hitch, had the android Jim Hammond, the original Human Torch, disappeared out of California by his neo-Nazi posse, and delivered to his lead scientist, a man named Krauss with sallow yellow skin, who gets sciencey. Using the android's blood, Krauss revived the Nazi warrior woman, reuniting her with her Hitler-appointed husband, U.S. Bund member turned Nazi poster boy, Masterman. While dark forces grow overseas, Namor, worried about the reunification of Germany, leaves New York on his private jet, headed to the fatherland to walk the streets he hasn't visited since World War II, where he stumbles upon the lab Krauss has been doing his experiments in and is soundly beaten by Masterman and a revitalized warrior woman. When Namor comes to, he finds himself being held hostage by a Mrs. Trunchbull look-alike, and that's where our story started so much pontificating ago. And with so much pontificating to go, we've got me, we've got you, we've got,
No further ado,
we've got Namor the Submariner, number 11.
The Invaders fight again.
Let's win!
Me and my best friend Pete, old adventures, new critiques. He spins webs, I spin yarns, kinda kooky, be forewarned. Look out, it's me and my friend Pete.
The credits.
The writer, penciler, cover artist, inker, and letterer on this one was the one-stop shop for comic book production, John Byrne. The colorist was Glynis Oliver. The editor was Terry Cavanaugh. The editor-in-chief was Tom DeFalco. The Submariner was created by Bill Everett. This issue was released New Year's Day, that's January 1st, 1991, with a cover date of March 1991.
The cover.
The cover of this issue has a small goldenrod banner on the upper right corner.
Giant-sized anniversary issue.
I don't know why we always choose the giant sizes. In green letters above the title of this issue, we get
Marvel's first and mightiest mutant.
And the title in powder blue?
Namor, the Submariner.
Of course, we've got Namor, posed in his suit and tie, using the box in the upper right corner to show how photogenic he is. And beneath our hero's name, we got Action Shot, a Human Torch who's flown from stage left, a fiery trail in his wake, his arms wide in front of him, his body red-orange, golden flames outlining his frame. He soars in front of explosions behind him, smoke and fire rising, rubble scattered to the edges of the page. This is Jim Hammond. Racing forward on the ground beneath him, large white A on his forehead, a large white star at the center of his blue chainmail chest, red and white hugging his abdominals and waist, giant red gloves, matching red pirate boots, iconic red, white, and blue shield in his left hand, his right fist clenched, muscles rippling, the man, the myth, the legend, Captain America. In a step in front of him, bounding forward, damn near naked, only green and gold chainmail draws on, widow's peak, extra peaky, eyebrows thin and arched, ears stabbing the air above him, Namor the Submariner. He's got his left hand raised, pointing forward, leading the charge. A widescreen caption box above Cap's head reads,
Bursting from the blazing battlefields of World War II.
And white lettering beneath Namor's feet finishes the thought.
The Invaders fight again.
Let's get into it. Page 1 opens to,
Scion of an air-breathing father and a water-breathing mother, gifted with superhuman strength and the power of flight, the avenging son of Atlantis has battled for and against humanity since World War II. Now, the wealth of the eternal seas at his command, he has set up a new campaign of conquest against the enemies of the environment itself. Stan Lee presents Namor, the Submariner.
And beneath this, a caption box tells us we're in
Berlin, Germany.
Byrne working from first panel, first page, because we get a small panoramic shot of the Berlin skyline.
A city made whole after 2 generations of enforced separation.
The camera shifts to a quiet side street in the industrial district.
And beneath her cold streets this morning blaze the hot flames of battle.
The hot flames indeed, because we find ourselves in a warehouse where Anne Raymond, dressed only in a large white t-shirt, stands stage left in the foreground, facing stage right, right hand to mouth, her back and left hand pressed against the machinery there. And what is she witnessing? The same thing we are. No less than 30 neo-Nazis in black vests, shirts, boots, and fading jeans. Some wear biker chains, some wear mohawks. All have weapons as they dogpile our hero in the middle of the room. Namor, the unseen. The odds may be stacked against him, but we know he's holding his own because we've got Nazis falling backwards. We've got Nazis on their knees. I shit you not. We've got one Nazi who looks like he's just been hurled towards the ceiling. And judging by the cold steel look of the thing when he hits it, curtains.
At the Storm Center, Namor, formerly the Crown Prince of fabled Atlantis.
No lies told, because we find the dehydrated submariner, his already thin-set eyes narrowed, raining blows on anybody foolish enough to jump in the scrum with him. A moment later, mustering strength we all know he has, he clubs a neo-Nazi in the chest with his left elbow. The force of the blow clears the space around him as he puts another down with his right. Let the Nazis hit the floor. Shit, let them hit the walls and ceiling too. I bet that's what he's thinking. The camera pulls back on Namor running through the mob, and we get
his opponents, street punks mostly, members of a neo-Nazi organization in part responsible for the kidnapping of Namor's erstwhile partner, the original Human Torch. The android's artificial blood had been used to accelerate the resurrection of the Nazi she-devil known as Warrior Woman, leaving him nearly drained and as close to death as is possible for one not truly alive.
And we see the android, Jim Hammond, unconscious on a metal slab. Not his finest moment, to be sure. But, sidebar, Jim Hammond recently had a holy shit, this is why I love comics moment in one of the best comics runs, currently sprinting towards legendary status, The Ultimates Volume 4. In issue 10, we get a peek into Jim Hammond's mind, where a beautifully vivid image of a terrified Adolf Hitler sits, quite literally being turned to ashes in a 6-panel slow burn at the hands of the original Human Torch. When the Wasp asks him how it felt taking out one of the greatest pieces of shit in human history, Jim waxes philosophical about having an actual CPU for a brain.
My brain isn't the world's oldest computer, but it's close. In the old days, I had to manually erase memory so it wouldn't slow down and seize up under the weight of all that history. I gave up my Medal of Honor and the memory of getting that Medal of Honor. I gave up good friends, good years, and most memories of my brilliant father, Dr. Horton. For a while, I played the piano, but even that had to go. But that memory I keep in full color and high definition. I go back to it again and again. It keeps me warm.
Ha! He made him funny! Seriously though. If you haven't been reading the Ultimates, you're missing out on something way past spectacular. I guess this has been another
shameless plug.
On 3, our story continues.
But this is not what Namor sees.
As Namor continues raging against the machine,
delirious from 3 days out of contact with life-giving water, he imagines himself once more in the thick of World War II and sees his adversaries as the soldiers of the Third Reich he battled half a century past.
We know he's fighting neo-Nazis, but I'm not sure it makes a difference to Marvel's Mightiest Mutant, because now we're seeing the neo-Nazis as he does, in full-on German World War II uniforms, Nazi patches on their arms, low-fitting helmets, and all. Neo or not, they're all fucked. Palming a Nazi's face, he uses it as a springboard, forcing the goon towards the floor as he leapfrogs over him towards a Nazi who's looking back towards us, shouting who knows what. But I imagine it's... as Namor puts him down in the gutter between panels, landing on his knees to open 4.
Not surprising then, that help when it arrives is seen by Namor to take this form.
And on 4, we find Namor where we left him last issue, stage right, looking up from the floor towards an open heavy wooden door shouting,
"The invaders are here."
And they are!
But the arrival of these legendary heroes raises more questions than it answers. For the woman once known as Spitfire is today an aging dowager.
Jacqueline Fallsworth Crichton, better known as Spitfire, flowing blonde-haired white woman, large red domino mask in the shape of a bird covering her blue eyes. She's 5'4" and 110 on the weigh-in. First appeared in The Invaders #7 in July 1976 and was created by Roy Thomas and Frank Robbins. Her superpowers, superhuman strength, speed, stamina, and senses, regenerative healing factor, sharp fangs, expert hand-to-hand combatant, trained airplane pilot, expert athlete.
Quoted from Marvel's Encyclopedia.
During World War II, Jacqueline Fallsworth served in England's Home Guard and was attacked by the Nazi vampire Baron Blood. She was rescued by the original Human Torch, that's Jim Hammond, an android who gave her a transfusion of his artificial blood. The combination of the vampire bite and the android blood gave Fallsworth superhuman speed. She adopted the name Spitfire and teamed up with the Invaders, a group of allied heroes who battled the Axis powers. Over time, her powers faded, but another transfusion from the Human Torch restored them. In modern times, she served with the New Invaders and with MI-13. After her romance with Blade, she was seen helping Captain Britain at Braddock Academy. Next we get
A man Namor has never met wears the proud colors of Union Jack.
in his costume of the same name, wrapping his 6 foot, 195-pound frame, his brown eyes and light brown hair covered by his blue mask and mirrored lenses, Union Jack's first appearance was also in The Invaders #7 in July 1976, and was also created by Roy Thomas and Frank Robbins. The Union Jack seen here, Joseph Chapman, first appeared in Captain America Volume 1, number 254, in February 1981 by Roger Stern, and the mastermind behind this issue, John Byrne. His powers? Drawing his abilities from the power of the Pendragon to go along with being a peak physical athlete, he has enhanced strength, speed, and stamina, is gripping a 6-shot revolver, and most assuredly has a dagger stashed somewhere on his person, probably tucked in his anklets.
Quoted from Marvel's Encyclopedia.
The original Union Jack, Lord James Falsworth, fought for the British during World War I as a member of the heroic team Freedom's 5. After an injury, he was succeeded as Union Jack by his son Brian, formerly known as the Destroyer, while his daughter Jacqueline went on to become Spitfire. Both heroes joined the World War II era Invaders, where they fought alongside Captain America and Namor the Submariner. Brian also founded the heroic post-war V Battalion. The third Union Jack is Joey Chapman, who took up the mantle when Spitfire's son, Kenneth Crichton, refused to follow in his uncle's footsteps. Chapman joined the Knights of Pendragon and received superhuman abilities through possession of the Pendragon spirit. As Union Jack, Chapman has served with the most recent Invaders team. And last but certainly not least,
And Namor's late cousin, Namor, was never a member of this long since disbanded team.
Aquaria Nautica Neptunica, aka On the Nose Much, better known as Namora. She's white and not that perfectly tan, Namor white to be sure. 5 feet 11 inches tall, 80s frizzed up blonde hair, blue eyes, signature Namor family eyebrows and pointed ears. She is 189 pounds on the weigh-in. She first appeared in Marvel Mystery Comics number 82 in May of 1947 and was created by Ken Bald and Sid Shores. Her powers: superhuman strength, speed, agility, stamina, durability, and reflexes, flight via wings on her ankles, aquatic adaptation, and longevity.
Quoted from Marvel Encyclopedia.
The Namor of Earth 616 was the cousin of Prince Namor the Submariner. Like Namor and unlike most Atlanteans, she did not have blue skin. Both possess similar powers. She is considered the mother of Namorita, her altered clone. Lyra of Lemuria seems to have murdered Namora years ago, but Namora recently resurfaced and joined the Agents of Atlas. During World War Hulk, she sided with the Hulk. When Prince Namor began to act like a tyrant in Atlantis, Namor risked her own life to make him see the error of his ways. Another Namor was Earth 2189's blue-skinned counterpart of Namor. A queen of Atlantis, she conquered her world before joining the Exiles, a team of interdimensional adventurers. This Namor was finally slain by an alternate version of Hyperion. Together they are, as Namor aptly pointed out,
The Invaders. Quoted from Marvel Encyclopedia.
during the opening days of World War II, before the United States had formally entered the conflict, an elite fighting unit was banded together by British Prime Minister Winston Churchill to halt Nazi aggression. It was the first great gathering of superhuman champions ever recorded. Captain America and Bucky Barnes, Namor the Submariner, the Human Torch and Toro, Union Jack, Spitfire, Miss America, and the Wizard. This alliance, known formally as the Invaders, cut a swath through enemy forces until the Axis powers were defeated. I think it's important to note, the first appearance of the Invaders was Giant Size Invaders #1 in June of 1975. So, World War II story that people felt was important to tell in 1975. Gotta wonder why. Maybe it's time for an Invaders revamp today. So the Invaders have just shown up, but are they even real? Because Namor's dehydrated, fighting for his life, and more than a little bit delusional. So we don't know what he's really seeing. Page 5 opens to,
For the beginnings of an answer, we must look here. John Reginald Home Memorial Hospital, West Bromwich, England. The early hours of yesterday.
so you know we're in a flashback. We're outside of a hospital of John Byrne's own creation, while someone inside says,
We're so sorry to have disturbed you, your ladyship, but she was most insistent we get in touch with you.
inside we see it was a Sikh doctor in a purple turban, brown vest, and signature doctor's lab coat, walking with a short elder woman, her white hair in a stylish bun. She's wearing an overcoat, green shirt, lime scarf, plaid skirt, and red shoes. Colors clashing everywhere. But she's a lady. This is Lady Crichton. This is Spitfire. You may be familiar with her because we just saw a much younger version a page ago, so Namor's definitely suffering from delusions. Either way, she tells the doctor it's quite alright, that she was told the way the young woman was found was unusual. When a second man, tall, white, greasy black hair parted down the middle, and an olive green jacket and matching bowler hat meets the two. Her ladyship says this is Chief Inspector Kitchener and asks what brings him so far from London. As the doctor turns to leave, the chief inspector and her ladyship begin a West Wing-styled walk and talk.
My purview has broadened considerably since I was put in charge of the Special Flying Squad, Lady Crichton. And when young women come crashing into people's gardens in the middle of the night,
Well, it does rather cut into my own sleep. Lady Kristen agrees, adding that the stranger they're headed towards has been asking for her by name. They enter the hospital room, Lady Kristen going on about how she wants to meet the young stranger because she sounds like a superhero, and having been one herself, she supposes, but stops short when she sees the young woman shouting, "Goodness gracious! Oh my gracious!" Shout outs to Weeds! On 6, we reaffirm that if Burns going to do anything is draw a beautiful person, and we find Namor Rita here in the farthest thing from a hospital gown. It's literally low-cut lingerie in hospital powder blue. She looks flawless, save for a bandage wrapping her forehead and blonde back-length mullet. She asks if the woman with her jaw on the floor used to be Spitfire. Kristen says she is. That has been 4 decades since she's seen Namor, but she'd recognize his family features anywhere, namely those eyebrows, pointed ears, and winged anklets. Namorita says, good, I need your help. Namor needs your help. Maybe even the world. This isn't the good lady's first rodeo. She tells Namorita to relax, take a deep breath, if that's suitable for an amphibian, of course, and say what she needs to say, making me think,
You guys all read the script, right?
I don't read script, script reads me.
What the hell does that even mean?
What you getting at with the book script? Spit that shit out, man!
All right.
Namorita says she'll try, but it won't be easy. That 3 days ago, she and Namor visited Germany. As you may know, Namor is now involved in the world of human high finance. He decided he wanted to check up on the German holdings of Oracle, the company he owns. Kristen is shocked. She had no idea Namor wore sweater vests and played racquetball on weekdays. But as a Fallsworth, you gotta know her ladyship is loaded. She says her own corporation deals with Oracle all the time. And Namor's company doing business all the time with Fallsworth Corporation without Kristen knowing says a lot about Namor's character. He's new to this high finance business. What better way to set himself up properly than calling his old friend and getting in bed together straight away? But he didn't. He let his business do the talking, and her business came his way anyway. Integrity. He's not king, but he's still so proper. Namorita says she knows about their business dealings. She also knows Kristen used to be a member of the Invaders 50 years ago. Kristen's like, okay, not too much on the years there, but go on. And 7 opens to a flashback inside of a flashback. Things are getting meta. We're back to last issue on a dark street. Outside of the cab, Namor and Namorita are in a moment before Namor shouts to the driver to stop. Namor hops out, telling Namorita he wants to walk a bit. Alone. I love this panel because Byrne could have just copy-pasted the panel from last issue, but consummate professional he is, he's changed the shot to frame Namor stays left in his brown trench coat with his high collar. Namorita looking up at him from her seat in the car, black leather jacket, pink low-cut blouse, and blue miniskirt on. Stylish family, to be sure. But in the next panel,
Well, I didn't buy that for a moment. I ordered the driver to pull down to the end of the block. Then,
we see Namorita took off her heels and gripping them in her right hand has gone airborne, tailing her cousin 50 feet above him, her thoughts racing. He looks like he's searching for someone or something. But what could it be? Until the Berlin Wall came down last year, this part of town was in the communist sector.
I didn't have long to wait for an answer to my question.
Looks like he's found whatever he's looking for. Again, what drew Namor to this place? None can say. The convenience of storytelling and Burns hoping that there's so much going on we don't notice Namor entered on a whim is my guess. However, we turn the page and we're on
The Infinity Page.
Page 8. Just in time to witness.
I didn't want Namor to know I disobeyed him, so I didn't immediately follow him through that old door. But I did snoop around until I found a loose board I could peek through and see.
Oh my gosh, that's gotta be the Nazi Superman Namor fought. The one called Masterman. On one knee looking through said loose board, Namorita spots the Masterman, fist clenched, probably dead center of a monologue.
Of course I knew the return of Masterman could only be bad news, but before I could act,
Guten Abend, Fräulein, says a voice from off panel. Namorita spins and stands in the gutter between panels and finds herself face to face with 30 neo-Nazis in the next. Pinned against the wall, one reaches at her with his right hand asking, what kind of creature are you? I wonder what kind of freak. But Namorita ain't soft. Before the goon makes contact, she's got his fingers in her left hand and with a squeeze and a tilt, has broken every one of them. Full on Bushido Brown. Translation?
Apparently, only one dude was able to actually lay a hand on Oprah's office door. They say Bushido Brown kept that hand.
On 9, we get,
turned nasty pretty fast. With my Atlantean strength, I should have been able to deal with them.
and we've got action. The dude's running the same play they've used against her cousin, mob Namorita and get fists flying in response. Right hand uppercut, left hand cross. A redhead and a sandy brown-haired Nazi hit the deck as she's grabbed around the neck by a third as the horde just keeps on coming.
But their numbers just seemed to keep swelling. It wasn't long before I realized I wasn't going to win, so I exercised the better part of valor.
And Namorita's right. She's about to be mollywopped with a blackjack from behind and showing the restraint a Nazi never ever does. her leather jacket gone to the battle, her pink blouse in tatters. She pulls a Neo from the Matrix Reloaded. Yeah, we're recycling references, and shoots into the sky, breaking the grip of two Nazis, who plummet back to the earth and the scum waiting there for them.
Easy.
You're right, calling a neo-Nazi scum is an insult to scum everywhere. Either way,
It made my guts churn to run away like that, but I could tell those punks had done me some damage. I wasn't gonna be much use to Namor alone.
and we get Namorita flying from stage left to right now over a body of water in the inky black sky, clutching her left ribcage with her right hand. Back in the hospital room on 10, Lady Kristen says the fact Namorita flew from Germany to England after taking an ass whooping like that is extraordinary. Namorita wound up in the hospital because she took most of a day during the flight and crash landed at the end. Translation: I just flew here from Germany and boy are my legs tired. Nothing?
Boo, you suck.
Everybody's a critic. The doctor and inspector in the room with him. The inspector says Namorita landed yesterday afternoon and was unconscious for most of the day. The doctor says as soon as she came to, she began calling for Lady Crichton. And the doctor gets shady.
That is, she started calling for Jacqueline Falsworth. If one of our older nurses hadn't happened to recall that was your maiden name.
Lady Crichton, sitting at the foot of Namorita's bed, says she's barely known the woman 10 minutes and already she's putting a strain on her ego. That everywhere she turns, she's reminded of her age before getting philosophical.
Still, if that really was that blighter masterman back after all these years, Winston Churchill said he stopped hating Germans the moment the war ended. And it's true, the whole German people cannot be held responsible for the atrocities of World War II. But some of the things that have been happening lately make me nervous.
She asks the shady doctor if Namorita is fit enough to travel. He says yes. 11 opens to,
Good. If you'd be so kind as to bring me whatever forms I need to sign for her release. I think it's high time I took her to.
and a silver Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow rolls through the gates of a brown brick black shingled roofed manor. Fallsworth Manor to be exact. The good lady's home to be sure. Namorita in the passenger seat shouting that it looks exactly as Namor described it.
Quoted from Wikipedia.
The Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow was a full-size luxury car produced by British automaker Rolls-Royce in various forms from 1965 to 1980. It was the first of the marquee to use unitary body and chassis construction. The Silver Shadow was produced from 1965 to 1976, and the Silver Shadow 2 from 1977 to 1980. The combined model run was 30,057 cars manufactured. James May reported it in 2014 as the largest production volume of any Rolls-Royce model. A Bentley badge version, the T-Series, was produced from 1965 through 1980 in 2,336 examples. And it's an English car to be sure, assembled in Crewe, England. For the record, despite the Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow being discontinued in 1980, a Silver Shadow in 1992 would cost you the equivalent of $500,000 today. This woman's got moolah.
Thanks, Wikipedia.
As the women step out of the classic car, they talk about Namor talking about his time with the Invaders. Namorita says the man never said too much without coaxing, but finally got into it while they flew over the Atlantic. Namorita reminding us in the next panel that she's got both style and the ability to flash back. She's got on a fire red oversized trench coat, blue skirt, red pumps beneath her ankle wings, and a white low-cut blouse, crushing the game, while reminding us that Namor's lost his ankle wings because of an anti-mutant virus he was subjected to all the way back in Namor the Submariner #1. They enter the manor in the final panel on page and is giving big chalet vibes. If the page ain't smelled like money before with the Rolls-Royce outside of the manor, it damn sure does now. The second floor of the house is a wraparound wooden balcony, massive high-arching bay windows with red curtains pulled back to allow light in, portraits and photographs covering the walls on both floors, while the first floor, tastefully decorated with teal love seats, armchairs, purple throw pillows on the couches, ornate vases, there's a piano in the corner, and if you want a sense of scope and space, there are no less than 3 different oriental rugs on the floor. Money all over aside, Lady Kristen says it's awful that Namor's lost his wings, that her super speed faded over the years, so she can't imagine losing it all at once. Namorita says he's in danger of losing a lot more than that. Lady Kristen agrees. They've got to act. Quickly. On 12, we're in
New York, New York. Specifically,
Avengers headquarters, Jarvis the butler here.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jarvis is in the building! But to be sure, this is a moment in history where the Avengers mentioned resembles a modernized storage warehouse, a slanted front entrance with a large A, the entire thing made of mortar and glass. Either way, Jarvis is in his signature tailcoat and stylish pinstripe purple slacks, gripping a cordless phone to his left ear and a tray of coffee and cups in his right. And behind him, we get a cameo from the immortal sorceress and season 1's first bonus episode star, Cersei, in a skin-tight black and white costume, who's using her magic to airlift a cup of joe from Jarvis's tray. We learn from Jarvis Lady Kristen is on the line looking for Captain America, but Jarvis lets her know the man stepped out for a moment. He asks if she wants to put a summons out for him. but Lady Christian says don't bother, that by the time Cap is reached, it could be too late. She says if the man comes back in the next hour, tell him she says, tally-ho! I hope that's a code word because otherwise Cap is gonna be hella confused. She hangs up the receiver in the 90s home phone she's holding, while Namorita, slouched in an armchair, ear hustling, realizes Cap ain't coming. She admits she was counting on an Avengers Quinjet swooping in to save the day, and adds that the new warriors, her teammates, you may know them as the kids responsible for the start of the Civil War, the Superhuman Registration Act, Spidey revealing his identity to the whole world, and ruining my whole life for one more day, but that's years down the line. They, like Cap, ain't coming. So Namorita, Lady Crichton, they're hoping for some big firepower, right? They're hoping for some Captain America, for some Avengers. They're not getting that. This is not stopping them at all. And I think this is so important, right? I'm not the person that should be in this moment. I'm not the person who wants to be in this moment because there are better people qualified to be in this moment. But here I am. Should I do nothing? Should they do nothing? Absolutely not. They're going to do what they can because real heroes put themselves between the people and the danger, whether they've got an Avengers membership card or not, whether they can get in touch with Captain America or not. All right, Lady Christian's keeping the faith. She pulls the receiver off the hook once more, saying they're not done yet. She's got one more trick up her sleeve. The women have left the chalet in the gutter between pages and open 13 to the two back out in what I imagine is the fog-filled air of England. Lady Kristen leading the way, listening to Namorita over her shoulder, who tells her no backup is only part of the problem, that getting to Germany is the other. We cannot expect Namorita, barely over a 30-on-1 ass whooping, to fly the lady across the ocean. And we all know a lady ain't out here being carried over large bodies of water by the armpits. She says,
Never say die till you're dead, Namorita. I asked you to come here with me for a reason.
leading Namorita to an old brick and mortar building. Namorita, unimpressed, asked why the lady brought her to an old horse stable. But you know, any superhero worth their salt, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and owning an estate has at least one storage area for their designer aircraft. See X-Men, see Avengers, see Lady Crichton, who throws the barn doors open to reveal a converted hangar housing a small dual-prop fighter plane. Green camouflage covers most of the plane. Both inner wings have black and white vertical stripes running down them. The propellers and wingtips are bright red. On the right wing, we've got a British star. On the left wing, a bullseye. In large bright orange paint on the hull of the ship, we see DK-01, probably the make and model of this fighter. The tail end of the plane is all glass and equipped with a tail gunner machine gun. The front of the ship seats two, also glass heavy, also equipped with machine guns. I tried finding the fighter online, but it doesn't seem to truly exist, just pulled from the working imagination of John Byrne. The closest resemblance to it is the Northrop P-61B, Black Widow, a fighter used for night missions, attacking under the light of flares dropped from other airships. Beautiful machinery. On 14, Lady Christian taps the glass hull of the warplane.
We planned to use her on our long-range missions against Hitler's Reich, but the war ended before we had the chance to try her. Not much by modern standards, perhaps, but I've had her kept in good shape.
She steps back to let Namorita get a closer look. The Atlantean is pretty impressed now. She says Namor never told her about this before a voice-off panel says the lady never told him either. The camera shifts and we see it's Union Jack, not the original Lady Falsworth's father, but Joseph Chapman, who we'll call Tunion Jack going forward. On 15, Namorita's back to being unimpressed, questioning if the man's got skills to go along with his muscles because Captain America, he is not. He gives her a brief exposition on his powers and abilities, namely the whole Pendragon business, and the three load into the fighter, Lady Christian taking the wheel. Remember, she's a pilot. As the good lady fires up the engines, Tunion says they don't have a runway. How are they going to take off? And we get a beautiful final panel on page of the ship shooting out of the stable and taking off vertically. Kristen shouting over the engine that they don't need no stinking runway. The woman's got a VTOL fighter jet. She's different. VTOL meaning vertical takeoff and landing. They race back across the Atlantic in the gutter between pages and open 16 with,
Thus, a remarkably short period of time later,
we find the ship racing above East Berlin. Namorita shouts,
That's the street!
inside, Lady Christian sets the jet to hover before going into fight mode and barking orders.
Toss down the rope ladder, would you, Jack? I don't know how well these old bones of mine will fare, but it's past time we were in action.
In the final panel, the three heroes burst into the warehouse where we find Namor on one knee, 5 neo-Nazis surrounding him, and we're finally back where we started, a room full of human garbage and the Prince of the Seven Seas. These ain't the invaders we hoped for, but it's the invaders we got. On 17, we see Lady Kristen came equipped with a steel-plated M1 carbine rifle, and you know I looked it up.
quoted from the Illustrated History of Weaponry, from flint axes to automatic weapons, M1 carbine.
In a run-up to World War II, the U.S. decided to develop an intermediate weapon for use by officers and NCOs, armored crews, truck drivers, and support personnel. One that would be more compact than the M1 Garand rifle, but more effective in combat than the M1 911 pistol. The result was the M1 carbine, a lightweight, semi-automatic weapon firing a special 30 caliber cartridge. The M1 was followed by the M2, which was capable of full auto as well as semi-auto fire, and a folding stock version of the M1, the M1A1. Although more than 6 million such carbines were issued before production ceased in the 1950s, the compact verdict was mixed. The weapon proved handy in street fighting in Europe and in jungle fighting in the Pacific, but many thought that it was too delicate and that the 30 caliber carbine cartridge was too weak. Well, here we are in the streets of Europe. She's chosen the right weapon for the job, it seems. And weak or not, it's gotta be better than the blackjack the dirty blonde neo-Nazi is wielding stage right. She tells the Nazis to step away from the prince. The blackjack wielding neo-Nazi, ignoring the intimidating figure of Tunyon Jack behind the good lady, shouts,
England is fine. I'll.
but whatever he will do is lost when Tunyon cocks his right fist back and cracks the goon across the jaw with a wicked right hook. The Nazi is flying face first, jaw so north it's back south, as he crashes into a wall lined with machinery. Let no words be spoken in this our
Bonus panel of the week.
That ninja's dead for sure. Did that hurt?
It had to hurt. I saw it.
And Tunyon could give a single fuck. He pulls out a Smith & Wesson revolver, brandishing it in front of the room.
Right. Anyone else for the same? I won't be so gentle next time.
He will put you in the ground. Dehydrated and red-skinned from the torture techniques applied to him, Namor says the man's entrance couldn't be more timely. In the next panel, we see Namor's delusions are continuing when Namora leans in, telling him he looks like weak old fish bait. And finally, Namor starts to realize,
Your voice. You are not Namora. You are Namorita. What? How?
in the final panel, he's finally snapped back to reality and sees his first cousin once removed, Namorita, standing before him with her head still bandaged. As Anne Raymond tells Namor he's been hallucinating, but she thinks he's okay now. I just want to ask, what evidence of him being okay does she have? If it's just that he's recognized Namorita isn't Namora, I'm skeptical at best. Gotta say, I'm skeptical at best. On 18, Anne Raymond gets properly introduced to the cavalry, telling them she used to be married to Toro, a fact that causes Lady Christian deep confusion, until she remembers that she knew Toro ages ago when the man couldn't possibly be a kid anymore. Anne Raymond says the man isn't anything anymore, that he was murdered by Fantastic Four villain, the Mad Thinker. She says that's water under the bridge, and speaking of water, she was in search of some for the prince before the Nazi punks burst in. She says on top of this, they've got to find out what happened to Jim Hammond. The good lady and Tunyon are confused that the man was not only here, but his blood has been used to bring back Warrior Woman. Namor says,
Indeed, both she and her misbegotten husband were somehow preserved, kept young and vital through the half-century since the end of the war.
Before Namorita spots a water cooler in the corner of this punk neo-Nazi warehouse Frankensteinian lab because comic books. She says it's not much, but Namor says it's more than enough before turning the cooler on himself and dousing his chest with the 10-gallon jug, shouting,
At the first touch of the precious fluid, I feel my strength returning.
He is fortified, and someone from off-panel shouts,
Good.
On 19, we're staring at Master Man, blonde hair and a crew cut, broad shoulders, thick thighs, and dressed like a reject from Morpheus' Nebuchadnezzar crew in a long black leather jacket, all black suit and tie, olive green collared shirt, and thick black sunglasses. Calling Namor a halfling, he says he's glad the man's filling out 100%, that he doesn't want to fight the man again if he isn't in his prime, because he doesn't want his victory diminished.
Freeze the moment. There are 3 more members of our cast we have yet to look in on. Here, in a crystalline tower, 3 miles away.
We're outside of Aeronaut's glass tri-cylinder skyscraper as someone inside says his name. When we zoom in, we see the white-haired Noct in an all-white suit, up close and personal with Warrior Woman. How close? She's got her jacket down off her bare shoulders. He's behind her. He's gripping her left hand in his own, his right hand on her bare shoulder, his lips pressed against her neck. Breathless, she says,
Ernak, please. This is not proper. I am a married woman.
He reminds her that it was against her will to someone she hates. He asks what the point is of the union. Now we know why he sent Master Man off to handle Namor alone, so he could be alone with Warrior Woman. It's giving King David sending Uriah to the front lines and hoping for the worst. It's giving...
Scandalous!
On 20, he's taking even more of a dominant stance. Now his right hand is across her chin, her head thrown back on his shoulder, his left wrapping her midsection as she grips his left arm with both hands. He says he doesn't care that the woman is 30 years his senior, that the fates have worked their magic to keep her young and vital for him. The camera zooms to his desktop where a photo album is open to a black and white photo of Master Man and Warrior Woman racing forward through a forest, Warrior Woman taking a moment to raise her left hand in a Nazi salute. It's sidebar. To the people out there who expect me to believe they knew about the Roman salute before Elon Musk threw it up, but didn't know other things about ancient Roman culture, like how fresh water got to the city, that they used to use communal sponges on sticks to clean their asses, or that the marble statues famous for their pristine white purity were really bright and, dare I say, gaudily painted, well, to you, I call bullshit, and add that even if that were the case, symbols matter and are often co-opted for nefarious purposes, usually by fascists who aren't creative enough to come up with their own things for themselves. All fascists know how to do is fucking destroy. I'm willing to bet if the man-baby Elon Musk was caught spray painting swastikas on a wall, you clowns would jump through hoops trying to convince us it wasn't racist, find out the swastika is a near ancient symbol of good luck and prosperity, and say he was just wishing the establishment good fortune, having no idea what religions and cultures have used it as such. Gaslight your mother. I'm not convinced. Back to Knox says these photographs of the Third Reich losing the war were when he fell in love with Warrior Woman, that he's loved her since she was a child. I think that says something too about the romanticization of World War II, and so many of us do it. I know I have done it. I love World War II history. Why? What is the draw? So many human beings lost their lives, yet we as history seem to glorify it and romanticize it, and Knox has done the same here to the point where he's brought back this woman that he had never met, never known, fell in love with her from a picture, from the history, from the memory of her. I don't have the answer on why we do it, but I can say in this moment I understand that he has. The camera pulls in close on his burgundy skin and pause for a moment. I have no idea why the man has literal burgundy skin, but it's comic books. Let it go and come on. He says imagine his joy then when his father let him know Baron Strucker's greatest scheme, keeping Master Man and Warrior Woman alive in the dreamless void of suspended animation. He says imagine that joy against the day he could take her in his arms. He does just that, pulls her close, and as his scientist Kraus looks on, he grabs her bicep with his left hand, the back of her bund head with his right hand, and open mouth Frenches her unabashedly. This is a great panel. Burns working. Warrior Woman puts some distance between the two in the gutter between pages, and 21 opens to her in front of the windows, looking breathless. She says she's overwhelmed, her head spins, her heart pounds. She's open. Knott says that's love she's feeling. The two of them were made for each other, that the only reason they were apart was the whole 30-year time difference, and that's been corrected. The man strips out of his shirt and blazer in the next panel and shows he's got muscles rippling. He's got striations. He's got conceit in every word from his lips.
Look at me, Julia. Am I not everything you ever desired in a man? On my orders, Dr. Kraus recreated the formula which changed weak, craven, willing Loma into mastermind. Since I came to manhood, I've been preparing for this day. The day I would claim Kriegerfrau as my bride.
Look, I told y'all last Namor episode, I don't know how to do a German accent. No offense to my German people, my German friends. I'm not a perfect person. Obviously, whatever riz he afforded himself on page 20 is gone with that little bit of monologue. Plus, would Warrior Woman be able to look past the fact that this man is again burgundy? I don't think she's that forward thinking. Knock turns to Kraus in the next panel, confused as to why the woman hasn't responded as he dreamed she would. Kraus is like, nobody's listening to me. As I told her muscle-bound husband, she's suffering brain damage. That suspended animation wasn't perfect and it's affected her. Her legendary fires are not burning. The only man not thinking with his dong or ego in this rising Reich, he says they've sent Master Man on a suicide mission. He knows Namor will leave that man snapped in two. He says if all's to go as planned, they've got to act now.
Back to the subterranean lab where we began. And rest assured, reader, we won't be leaving now until the battle is won. By one side or the other.
And we got action. 22 opens to Namor ducking a backhanded fist from a smirking Master Man who's knocked a piece of generator from the wall that flies low behind him directly towards her ladyship who's tackled out of the way by an alert Namorita. On the floor of the next panel, Namorita helps Christian up, who laments the fact that she's not a 20-year-old in 1945 anymore. But you gotta admire the woman's scrappiness here. She is a 60-something-year-old woman who's answered the call of duty. Age does not matter. Or I think one of my favorite lines from How I Met Your Mother is when they do the Lethal Weapon episode where they start doing things that they're too old for, and they keep quoting Danny Glover's character from Lethal Weapon, Murtaugh.
I'm too old for this shit.
Right? But they realize at the end of the episode that they're not too old for this shit. that when shit happens, you handle it, right? Lady Crichton would much prefer to be a 20-something-year-old girl with super speed, with her fangs, with all of her powers at their peak, right? To fight this battle. But she's not. And that didn't force her to sit on the couch. She got up, she got out, she got action. The only time you're too old for this shit, respectfully, is when you're dead. But otherwise, you gonna do history or history's gonna do you. One way or the other, time marches forward. I suggest you be a part of it because it'll affect you regardless. I think Lady Crichton understands that. Back 2. Still, Namorita realizes there are other ways to fight than throwing punches. She can round up allies, in this case helping Anne Raymond look for Jim Hammond. Christian thinks this is sound advice and leads Anne away, assuming the torch is being held in one of the nearby chambers. Also, everything ain't about fighting, right? If protesting is your game, get out there, get protesting. But there are so many different fronts that this needs to be fought on. Shout out to the lawyers who are, of the ACLU especially, doing the damn thing. Outside, pushing back every chance they get. You find where you can fight back. If you're a person of wealth and means, I promise you that money could help somebody, right? If you're a professional of some kind, figure out how that profession can be used to help. All of these different fronts are places where the fight needs to be fought. So the idea that you need to go out and do something specifically that's not your lane, don't do that. Find your lane and then put the pedal through the fucking floor. I'm gonna keep going. Let me get back to it. So Kristen and Anne go off to look for the torch. On 23, as Tunyon stands in the foreground, the neo-Nazis he's holding hostage chide him. A blonde-haired racist says the hero should let them go, because as soon as Masterman is done with the fishling, he's going to focus on Tunyon. Union Jack's response?
What's that? Were you talking to me, Fritz? I couldn't quite understand you. You were mumbling. Here, let me see if I can't loosen your jaw a bit.
He grabs the punk by the collar of his leather vest in the next panel and slams his forehead into the Nazi's nose, tossing the goon back to his posse in the gutter between panels. The neo-Nazi doesn't know when he's beat. He calls Tunyon an English pig, alludes to a threat of the fatherland rising, but he's cut off by Tunyon.
Well, I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for that if I were you. If your so-called Superman is any indication, it looks like your new Reich is going to come a proper copper.
Translation? Proper cropper is a British slang phrase meaning to fail badly or to suffer a sudden and embarrassing failure. It can also refer to falling headlong, especially from a horse. The phrase likely originated from the idiom neck and crop, which described the horse falling headfirst and with his backside hitting the ground together. Translation? The Reich is doomed. And he ain't wrong. We find Namor in the last panel on page, his right fist buried in Masterman's gut, his left fist raised to put the man down, but a cold sweat breaks out on Masterman's forehead. He mutters, "Weak, can't stand," and undergoes a metamorphosis in the gutter between pages. When we find him on 24, he's a 90-pound weakling swimming in the clothes that were just skin tight on him.
Great Neptune's trident. He's reverted to his original form. He has become Willy Lomer once more.
It's at this moment that Airnock enters the room in full-on BDSM outfit. Large leather domino mask wrapping his burgundy face and hair, a modified V-cut corset that extends up his ripped chest and caps his large shoulders, black leather gloves that extend up his arms wrapping his biceps. He's got a large red leather belt, no buckle, and black skin-tight leather pants that lead into black boots. This man looks absolutely crazy. He's essentially wearing a male version of Warrior Woman's costume. Nuts! But he says punk bitch Willy Lomer losing his powers was the plan all along.
The plan all along, Prince Namor. There is room in the new Reich for only one Masterman.
Namorita, speaking for the room, asks who the heck this is now. Who is this guy? Before she's promptly shoved aside by the fashionably foul Noct. He says he came here to battle Namor. Warrior Woman, one step behind him, chimes in that she'll deal with the mongrel female. She grabs Namorita by the biceps, but Namorita's got big brass ovaries.
Well, excuse me, all the pieces beefy, but so far I don't see a whole lot in you that impresses me.
Meanwhile, Noct punches the clock, gets right to business with a left hook across Namor's jaw, shouting that he's been waiting for this moment, training for this moment his whole life. And Namor eats the blow. He's like, cool, you're stronger than Willy Lomer to be sure.
But strength alone has never been enough to vanquish the Prince of Atlantis.
And seizing Noct's arm in the gutter between pages, swings the man off his feet and into a nearby terminal to open 25.
Meanwhile,
Anne and Lady Christian have located the torch, but Anne thinks they're too late, that the man's dead. Slowly his eyes flutter open. He mutters, "Not quite." Christian asks if the man's alright, if he can move. He says he can, but asks Lady Christian who she is. She replies a friend, but her feeling of being a woman out of time returns, thinking the man doesn't remember her at all. She doesn't have time to dwell. They've got to get Hammond out of here before. But before she can finish her sentence, we see a short man, brown trench coat and matching fedora, all black suit. His left hand is gripping a cane that's propping him up. His right, an Uzi submachine gun. He says the name's Kraus, Friedrich Kraus. He wouldn't expect the good lady to have heard of him. On 26, he orders her to step away from the android. But you know, like I know, Lady Kristen don't take orders from no damn Nazis. And she may not be 20 years old anymore, she may not be able to move at 50-mile-per-hour speeds anymore, but she's still fast enough to deal with Friedrich Kraus, sprinting across the room, shouting that she doesn't think so. She leads into a right cross that puts Kraus's jaw north, the last position you want to be in a fight. But he still manages to let that thing go, and with the good lady's full frame in front of him, we have to assume she's been hit. In the next panel, someone screams, "Lady Kristen!" distracting Namor just enough to get him to turn his head and take a right cross to the face from Noct. The blow is enough to force Namor back onto his knees. Noct stands over him, calls the prince a fool, says to become distracted in battle is to welcome ignominious defeat. A voice from off panel concurs.
Sounds like you've done your homework, fella.
In the last panel, we see who's just appeared on scene.
Oh, we haven't met before, have we? Let me introduce myself. People call me Captain America.
In his red, white, and blue costume, shield protecting the left side of his body, a smile on his face, the Star-Spangled Avenger. John Byrne is working because this is almost a spitting image of Cap's stance from way back in Captain America Volume 1, Number 1, in March of 1941, when the hero burst on scene, punching the Fuhrer himself across the jaw. All these years passed, and Cap still knows how to deal with a Nazi. As the French would say, plus ça change, plus c'est même chose. I guess it's safe to say Jarvis delivered the message. On 27, he continues.
Looks like I arrived just in the nick of time, Namor. Got yourself in a heap of trouble, I see.
While leapfrogging a charging Noct, sending the man headlong into awaiting Namor's left cross.
Not for long. With all the invaders reunited, we cannot fail.
As Cap and Tunyon look on beaming, and the neo-Nazis watch, realizing they've chosen the wrong side, Namor lets loose a vicious right uppercut that lifts Noct off his feet and sends the racist jaw north, shouting,
"We'll bring this new right down even faster than we did the last."
And you know what I bet he's thinking?
Imperious Rex.
Warrior Woman, sensing the tide of battle is shifted, tries to make tracks, but Namorita grabs her by the arm as a weakened Willie Loman looks on. And on 28, Namorita is sent flying into another control terminal. They're all over the place by a flexing Warrior Woman who shouts her caution isn't cowardice. And because Namorita thinks it is, the young woman is going to die slow and painful.
In the next chamber,
we find Anne on one knee, Lady Kristen propped up against the wall. Anne says the woman's losing a lot of blood. Fast. Kristen's response?
"'Tis not so wide as a barn door, nor so deep as a well, but 'tis enough to serve. But that smell, it's that horrid smell."
Why, my good lady, how mercutio of you. Translation, she thinks she's finna die. And that smell? It's the sickly scientist Kraus. He's on the floor on the other side of the room, his shirt open, silver machinery covering his chest. He says when she threw him against the wall, she damaged his apparatus. He says he was wounded while escaping the Eastern Bloc in 1961, but because he was the only man who could revive Master Man and Warrior Woman, he was kept alive by this machine, a machine that gave him life even in death. Kiss comic books, man. It's comic books. We got people who've been dead for 40 years popping up. We got androids transfusing people, giving them their lives back. We got an android who gave a young lady superpowers in like World War II. These things are happening. It's comic books. You still haven't learned it yet. You better let it go. You better come on. You better take the symbolism out of it and run. Spitfire, run. So he says his machine gave him life even in death before he starts rapidly decomposing. The skin melts from his face, and then he's more bone than man, as he says,
"But now I fear the Valkyrie have come for me. At last."
And
quoted from Wikipedia.
In Norse mythology, a Valkyrie, from Old Norse Valkyria, chooser of the slain, is one of a host of female figures who guide souls of the dead to the god Odin's hall Valhalla. There, the deceased warriors become Einherjar, single fighters or once fighters. When the Einherjar are not preparing for the cataclysmic events of Ragnarok, the Valkyries bear them mead. Valkyries also appear as lovers of heroes and other mortals, where they are sometimes described as the daughters of royalty, sometimes accompanied by ravens, and sometimes connected to swans or horses. This, of course, makes me think of The Ride of the Valkyries. And The Ride of the Valkyries is the popular name of the prelude to the first scene of the third and last act of Die Valkyrie, the second of the 4 epic music dramas that constitute the operatic cycle Der Ring des Nibelungen, English, The Ring of Nibelung, composed by Richard Wagner. And Valkyries share a special symbolism to Nazis.
Quoted from Music as Propaganda by Samantha Howerton.
Richard Wagner was a personal favorite composer of Hitler's. Wagner was known to be anti-Semitic as he believed that Jewish musicians were the ultimate source of what he perceived as substanceless music. Wagner expressed his belief in other anti-Semitic principles under a pseudonym in a work titled Judentum in der Musik, Judaism in Music, that was published in 1850. His most famous composition, Die Valkyrie, Ride of the Valkyries, is an epic musical piece that incites intense feelings of wonder among listeners. This composition was broadcast to accompany reports on German air attacks. Wagner's music was utilized in a way that made the Germans feel pride in their country's aggression, and this aggressive national pride was also present in Bruckner, yet another composer endorsed by the Nazis. Goes off on a tear there.
Thanks, Mrs. Howerton.
So, if you think that you've never heard Flight of the Valkyries, if you're unfamiliar with Flight of the Valkyries, you most assuredly have heard it if you're a fan of action movies, if you're a fan of World War II movies, as I am. It's essentially that's Flight of the Valkyries, alright? Racist-ass, anti-Semitic Richard Wagner, Flight of the Valkyries. But, all that to say, to be sure, Kraus, you, sir, are not a soldier who died for some noble purpose. No Nazi is. Rest in every level of hell created by both man and the Most High. Hope I don't see you on the other side. On 29, Anne stands staring at the rapidly decomposing Nazi, both hands covering her mouth in shock as Jim Hammond kneels beside his former teammate, asking if it's really her. Christian says it is, but sadly she's not going to be in this world any longer. He takes her hand, shouts for her to hold on, while she reminisces.
There's the tone I remember. You were in love with me back then, weren't you, Torch? But I only had eyes for Captain America. Silly girl. Might have been a different world if... Oh.
Hammond tells her to save her strength, but she won't.
No. Strength left to save, I'm afraid. Well, don't worry. I'll welcome the release. Been living the lie too long.
Anne turns her attention to the two, tears beginning to run out of her eyes, asking if Christian is dead. But Hammond ain't having it. He shouts that he won't let her die, that his blood saved her once, and it can do it again. He orders Anne to help him get Christian up onto the slab he just got down from, that they'll put these Nazi machines to good use. But Anne pushes back. She says neither of them are sciencey. That even if they get the machine started, they don't know how to stop it. That the rejuvenator can drain Jim dry. But she has to know heroes put themselves between the people and the danger, and Jim Hammond is no exception. 30 opens to a close-up of his face, his blue eyes fiery and determined.
Small price to pay, Anne. I may call myself the Human Torch, but I've never been anything but an android, an artificial being. My life cannot be weighed against the survival of a human being. If I must die to save Jackie, then so be it.
And as this grim heroic choice is bravely made.
In the background of the next panel, we see a 3-on-1 unfolding. Masterman being jumped by Cap, Tunyon, and Namor, while in the foreground, weak Willie Lomer begs Warrior Woman to help him. And with no superpowers to be exploited, Warrior Woman proves she doesn't give two shits about the former Masterman. She grabs Loman by the collar of his now way too big leather jacket, calls him tripled and worthless, and says that her place is now in Nock's side, the true Masterman.
Excuse me for busting in on our little lover's tiff, kiddies.
And I imagine Aunt Marita taps her on the shoulder in the gutter between panels because she finishes her thought in the next with an uppercut.
But I don't think you and I are quite finished, muscle man.
Quipping! While wee Willie Lomer thinks that all he ever wanted, nay, needed in life was Warrior Woman, and she spurns him, mocks him. Oh, poor you, Willie, but you had to know as a frail little American soy boy, you weren't gonna keep her. How sad. On 31, Tunyon, gripping Nock's hand, stares over his shoulder as Willie gains his attention, screaming that if he can't be with his beloved Julia, his life itself holds no promise for him. He wrenches open the door of a control box where two large levers sit and grabs them both. I imagine he flips both switches in the gutter between panel because in the next, he's washed in an explosion that summarily ends his life, making me think...
Woo, you know you did.
In the next panel, surrounded by billowing black smoke, Namor breaks stage right, shouting for everyone to get clear, that the whole lab is going to go up. Meanwhile, Cap breaks stage left. He's shouting,
"Grab the civilians! They have no superpowers to protect them! They may be Nazis, but it's not for us to stand by and let them die!"
Oh, Cap, I gotta say, I hard disagree. Did you not hear my rant on the trolley problem? But you know, Cap's gonna cap. On 32, Namorita's pulling the Cap. She's trying to help Warrior Woman, who shouts at her to leave her alone, that she doesn't need help from such as Namorita. Before a second explosion rocks the facility, this time catching Namorita in the blast, who barely has time to shield herself with her arms. In the next panel, Anne Raymond watches as Cap, Namor, and Tunyon each burst from a smoking hallway, each carrying a neo-Nazi like a sack of potatoes under each arm, before Namorita shoots through the flames, airborne, carrying 2 neo-Nazis herself. So they saved 8 fascists, but there were about 30 of them when the fight started. So, all that fascism and no savior? How's that? On 33, Namor says they're all fine, but he's not sure the same can be said about their German foes. Cap adds,
"The new Masterman was right at the heart of the blast. I think poor Mr. Lomer took his wife and his rival with him. But we can't stand around gabbing. This chamber will go up soon. Did you find the torch?"
Anne says she has, leading the heroes to the metal slab the android is laying on. But he's dead. Namor is stunned. He asks how this happened, as Cap and Namor step closer to get a better look at their fallen comrades, because the torch is side by side with Spitfire, who's unconscious on her own slab, but we can barely see her skirt and hand. and says he gave his life to save Lady Christian's, and it's about to add the woman didn't make it, despite Christian's efforts, when the woman suddenly sits up, her face shrouded in shadow, massaging her forehead. She says she's alright. At least, she thinks she is, that she feels strange. And on 34, we see why. In a full-page spread, we see the backs of Namorita, Namor, Toonians, and the side of Captain America's heads as they all look on at a de-aged Lady Christian. Now at least 40 years younger, and judging by the fact she's about 2 inches taller, she was slouching something fierce through the prime of her life. Either way, Jim Hammond wanted to save her life, and he's thrown her one even better. He's given her back her prime.
New York, New York. 10 days later.
On 35, we're outside the Oracle Link skyscraper, Namor's corporation, where the Avengers, Fantastic Four, and I assume Oracle board members are sitting outside of the building. Stage left of them sits a giant futuristic-looking torch stand, and in front of them a large crowd is gathered in the area to listen, and standing at the speaker's podium, Captain America.
And so we gather to dedicate this eternal flame to a fallen comrade. I'd like to thank Mr. Tony Stark and Stark Industries for the speed with which they constructed this monument.
He continues.
To most of you, the original Human Torch was nothing more than a name in the history books. But to those of us who knew him, who fought at his side, he was a man as brave, as loyal, as loving and giving as any mortal ever born of woman.
He wraps his speech up and Namor steps to the podium, dapper as ever in a black suit and tie.
Though in our day, the Torch and I were known to have our disagreements, to see our elemental natures manifest themselves in the age-old battle of fire versus water. Still, he was in the end a friend without equal, one who made without hesitation the ultimate sacrifice.
We see Lady Christian next, brown power suit, white shirt, frilled ascot protruding from her collar, as she steps to the microphone, baby-faced once more.
It had been over 40 years since the last time I saw the Human Torch. In that time I had married, born a son, and grown old. Grown old living under the shadow of a lie, a deception I played out even in the presence of my dearest friends. The gift the Torch gave with his dying sacrifice was more than life. It is a second chance at life, a chance to redeem myself, to make up for the mistakes of the long-dead past.
And what was the lie and deception she was living under? Yeah, I know, I looked it up. The woman had been living in a retirement home, and the story is kind of a bland one to be sure. She saves the life of a young woman who works at the facility by killing a mutant by knocking a stone statue onto the man. I assume after this she remembers she's damn near a billionaire and heads back to her chalet. It was a weird story. What she's saying here doesn't match up with the story. So this lie that she's talking about she's living, I can only think that she means that kind of she gave up on life, right? Like she hit her golden years and she was like, I'm done. And she went to live in a retirement home. That's the only thing I could think of. Either way, Captain America retakes the stand, saying they're going to light the eternal flame and it's going to burn for as long as the city does. And for help lighting it, who better than the human matchstick, the Long Island Igniter, Sifu Hot Rod himself, Johnny Storm. The importance of someone carrying the torch, of passing the torch, can't be understated in a world fighting fascism. Captain America knows that and chose the literal torch the torch has been passed to. Confused yet? Too bad, because now Jonathan Lowell Spencer Storm is speaking to the crowd.
I met the original Torch many years ago above a desert of the Southwest. Circumstances forced us to battle then, but in the end, he allowed himself to be defeated rather than destroy myself and my partners in the Fantastic Four. In memory of that, and everything else he did, I am honored to be the one to light this flame.
And with a blast of fire from the pointer finger of his left hand towards the eternal flame, the memorial for Jim Hammond is complete.
Later.
We find Lady Kristen walking alongside Namorita in a fire teal jacket and skirt and black turtleneck. Namorita got style, boy. And a blonde man in a full-on red Canadian tuxedo. That's red jean collar jacket, red jean pants, black t-shirt, black belt. This is Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man. Why he's dressed in all red is completely beyond me in this moment. Fashion on trash. But shout out to my middle school math teacher, Mr. Ant-Man, a Marvel zombie in his own right. I'm still not sure if he changed his name to Ant-Man or if he was born with it. But I'd like to thank the former, and apologies for the whole rat bastard thing. Kids are young and dumb. What you want me to say? I deal with it every day now. I think my life is karmatic as fuck. Either way, anyway, Kristen asked if there are going to be any adverse effects to her losing 40 years of life, and she's asking the right person. Dr. Hank Pym holds 9 graduate degrees, one of them in biochemistry, so he would know. He says she's in every respect a normal, healthy 16-year-old girl. Namor, smiling, walks up to her other side.
Who just happens to have all the memories and life experiences of a woman 4 times that age. It will take some getting used to.
Settle down, Prince of Atlantis. You being creepy as fuck. Toonion's confused. He says Jackie, Lady Christian's first name. He breaking all types of etiquette, but we respect it. Jackie was mortally wounded, but she doesn't even have a scar. On 37, Dr. Pym gets silency.
No, I also don't find the additional pounds she'd added since she was originally a teenager. My best guess is that her newly accelerated metabolism healed the wound and drew on the reserves of fat tissue for the energy to do the job without completely debilitating her.
Kristen says she still doesn't get it. Is android blood a fountain of youth? Pym says only for her. that the first transfusion caused a permanent mutagenic effect in her cell structure, and the second was a much more total transfusion than the first. She says, hey, I don't understand it, but I appreciate it. I understand it, but if you don't, it's comic books. Let it go. Come on. Someone from off panel says,
That's pretty much the same attitude I adopt from Jackie.
In the next panel, we find Jim Hammond on a leather chair in a green turtleneck, his left leg crossed over his right. And who's beside him, gripping his left knee? And Raymond. The Human Torch is still alive, and Riz going crazy has bagged Batty and Raymond. Not only that, they've been watching the news of the Eternal Flame lighting. Meta, thy name be Hammond. When Namorita asks how he feels, Hammond replies,
Pretty good for a dead man, although I feel a little odd when I think back on my big ultimate sacrifice speech. Seems like I was a little premature.
Namor says not at all, that the man had no way of knowing his blood could save Jackie without it costing him his life. Cap asks how the man liked his ceremony. On 38, Hammond Stan says the whole thing was strange, that not every man gets to see his own wake. He asked if it was necessary. Cap says it was very necessary, that even though he's still alive, the massive blood transfusions he's been through, first with Warrior Woman, then with Lady Christian, have drained him of his flame powers, maybe forever. Namor adds the first rule of comics, if you ain't find the body, they ain't dead. Hell, sometimes even if you do. And because Master Man and Warrior Woman's bodies were unaccounted for, it's in Hammond's best interest to use his secret identity and embrace a normal life. In fact, Namor says he's got a proposition for the Mandroid. Namely,
my Oracle Corporation needs a head of security. With your experience, that seems a job to which you would be well suited.
Jim says sweet offer. He'll think about it when he and Ann get back from their trip. That he's got a lot to think about.
In real time, I've only been alive for about 12 years. I spent all of that being the Torch. Ann thinks it's high time I found out what the other part of my own name means.
He's going to go and figure out what it means to be a man. A caption box closes the issue.
Next issue, his lawyers can delay the inevitable no longer. Join us in 30 days when Namor learns he must reap the whirlwind.
And we're out! John Byrne is one of the all-time greats. He showed it in so many different ways with this story. I can't promise going forward I'll just run through the comics without social commentary. In fact, I absolutely guarantee I can't. People are being snatched off the street in broad daylight. Institutions of higher learning are being told what they can and can't teach. Environmental protections are being rolled back. I don't have all the answers, but I know for damn sure acting like we're living in a normal position in time is the quickest way to normalize these actions. I focus on economics here because we had a billionaire in story using economic turmoil to consolidate his power. But fascism attacks constantly and on many different fronts. And whenever I think it relates here, I'm going to make sure I do my best to share my thoughts. If that bothers you, well, everything ain't for everybody and everybody can't go. To everybody else, I'll see you back in the main episode, hopefully later this month. What'd you think of this episode? Let us know at meandmyfriendpete@gmail.com. Shoot us your questions there too. We got answers. All that said, the bonus panel of the week can be found at patreon.com/HSPP. Please like, please comment, please share, please take care. Please remember to think of the world. I know you're being true to yourself. Remember, it is a farce to think you can't make a difference. You have great power. So with that dusty trail of calling, you know there's no use stalling. So we throw the tagline, my people with great power. Make sure you're being responsible. I'm out of here.